This is just a breakdown of chapter number 5 from Communicating for Results by Carolyn Meyer. The objectives for this chapter are effective sentences and effective paragraphs. This is just a breakdown of the effective sentences portion. It's the longer of the two. It begins with phrases and clauses. A phrase is simply a group of words that contain either a subject or a verb, but not both. A clause contains a subject and a verb, and it is either an independent clause, meaning it's a sentence, or a dependent clause, meaning it's a fragment. So this is an example of a clause, and the clause is called a subordinating clause. And it's a subordinating clause because it is beginning with a subordinating conjunction, the word when. So the part here that's highlighted in this dark blue, this is your subordinating clause, and here it is again. So you'll notice here in the second example, this one here, you'll notice when I smash the computer is after the independent clause. And you'll notice when it's coming after the independent clause, there is no comma. You'll notice here it is before this independent clause, and so you'll notice there is a comma. So for this type of clause, if it follows an independent clause, there's no comma. If it comes before an independent clause, there is a comma. And here I just tell you again, a clause opening with a subordinate conjunction won't make sense on its own. So when we meet Thursday, that's not a sentence. It is a sentence fragment, a dependent clause. Whereas this section coming after it, we will discuss the issue. That is a sentence. We will discuss the issue. So again, depending on where you place your dependent clause, depends on if you need a comma. I know that you've probably been told that you can't start a sentence with the word because, but you can. You just need to make sure that you add a comma, not a period, and have a independent clause following it. So Belinda ran because the police were chasing her. It can also be because the police were chasing her, comma, Belinda ran. Belinda ran is a independent clause. It's a sentence. It has a subject, Belinda, and it has a predicate, ran, or a verb. I've given you a list of the many subordinating conjunctions. There are too many to list all of them, and there are too many in the English language to memorize. So you actually have to know how the sentence behaves. They have a very brief section on relative pronouns, and actually very brief. So what I've also done is I've provided examples for relative pronouns that I hope will help you. Who or whoever is used for people, whom, which they did not mention, which I can understand. We don't see this a lot anymore. We're often just using who in place of whom now, which is fine. You don't ever have to use whom if you don't want to. Who is fine. But whom is used for people when the person is the object of the verb. That used for people, things, and animals. Whose is used for possessions, as in whose car is it? Whose house is that? Whichever used for things and animals. And then I've just provided an example of how they're used. And then there are types of sentences, and there are 4: simple, compound, complex, and compound complex. So a simple sentence, and here are your definitions. 1 independent clause with an example Compound, two or more independent clauses with an example. Complex, one or more dependent clauses and one independent clause. And a compound and complex, one or more dependent clauses and two or more independent clauses. And then I've just provided examples. A simple sentence has one subject and one predicate. So the subject here is, get that little pen. The subject here is we, and this is your predicate. One subject, one predicate is a simple sentence. In a compound sentence, you're going to see two or more complete sentences, normally joined by commas or semicolons or colons. So here we have John, and we have we, and here's one, and here's the other. And these are joined together by a coordinating conjunction and a comma. So John will present his report. You could put a period there, cut the comma, cut the and, put a capital W, we will discuss the issue. You have two complete sentences that are joined together with a comma and a coordinating conjunction. A complex sentence is one or more dependent clause and one independent clause. So here we're seeing that subordinating conjunction, and we're seeing the dependent clause ahead of the, that is far too dark, please forgive me, ahead of the independent clause. So your independent clause is, we will discuss the issue. That is a sentence. When we meet Thursday, that's a dependent clause. It can't live by itself. You could also write, we will discuss the issue when we meet Thursday. So there are always two different ways of writing complex sentences. Compound and complex is one or more dependent clauses and two or more independent clauses. So we're seeing here we have a subordinating clause, and here we see that is a sentence, and here we have a sentence. So we have one dependent in the blue, two independent clauses, and these independent clauses are joined by commas and a coordinating conjunction and. And then they go on to discuss improving sentence variety and length. They give you kind of an idea of how to vary rhythm with short and long sentences. Sentences of 10 or fewer words have the greatest impact and readability. So short, concise sentences. Sentences of up to 20 words still have a high rate of reader comprehension. And they're indicating that if you have a sentence with over 20 words, your reader just is not going to grasp, or his attention is going to fade away. And then they have provided examples of a short sentence and two long sentences. So a prepositional phrase is a group of words beginning with a preposition. And I've highlighted them in this blue with at, to, of, by, against, toward, from, above, on, or in. They're normally words that have something to do with position, or like time, or, above, from, through, underneath. A participial phrase contains a verbal, and I'm so sorry, this textbook's quite dense. A verbal is, it looks like a verb, but it isn't actually functioning as a verb. So they take on the form of a present participle. So are an infinitive. So example, working, are to work, or a past participle, worked. And then they have a section on phrasing basic types of questions. A declarative sentence is a sentence that makes a statement, such as, my name is Heather. The type of question you ask depends upon the type of response you seek. So, and then they go through a number of, I think, three types of questions. So there's closed questions, and those are questions that require only a yes or a no or a very few words in response. And so, for example, can you ship our order today? Maybe something like, hi, what's your name? In Canada, I think we ask, hi, how are you? Expecting the person to say, fine, or I'm good, and how are you? So we're not actually expecting a person to actually tell us how they are. So that's another example of normally an idea of a closed question. Open questions call for further and more thoughtful responses. So, for example, they give, how can we reduce production costs? In what way will deregulation affect the industry? And hypothetical questions are what if, such as if you were given creative control of this project, what would you do? Improving sentence clarity, and some of this they've already gone over. Um, don't be vague, be very specific. Be careful with pronouns. That, if you're using he, it, she, they, that who those pronouns or what those pronouns are referencing is clear. Place dependent clauses at the beginning or the end of sentences as opposed to in the middle. Writing with consistency. Don't switch from singular to plural or from plural to singular when referring to the same thing. Don't shift the frame of reference. So don't shift between I to you to he. Then they talk about writing balanced sentences, particularly a parallel structure. And then the example they give is our priorities are to improve employee morale, reduce absenteeism, and encourage professional development. So that improve, reduce, encourage are in the same time frame. It's not improving, it's not improving followed by reducing or improve or reduction, that they're all parallel. And then they give some ideas of writing with emphasis, mechanical devices such as that, which I found an odd term, but by mechanical devices, they're referring to underlining all capitals, boldface, using color, italics, text boxes, and so on. Punctuation, and they talk about what is known as the M dash, which I'm actually fairly fond of. And it's just that a long dash that takes the place of commas. And then formatting using tables, vertical lists. Remember to put important facts first or last. Use short, simple sentence to spotlight key ideas, and so on. And then applying active and passive voice, which they went over in the last chapter. But an active voice is, for example, John completed his expense report before the April 1 deadline. And a passive voice is, so this is your active voice. This is what I'm reading from. And the passive voice here, John's expense report was completed before the April 1st deadline. And then they suggest that you look for 3 common elements to check for passive constructions so that you don't want to be writing in the passive voice. You want to always write in the active. And then they say the verb to be, and to be is I am, he is, she is, we are, they are, it was, they were, be, being, plus a past participle, plus the word by, and then a sentence. The textbook is, it can be difficult to work through. And I think that much of this you will honestly learn as you just write. So please do not feel that you need to know what a past participle is. You don't. You can live a full and complete life without ever knowing what a past participle is. And in some ways, you're just recognizing it innately. I do not think it's important for you to be grammarians. I do think it's important for you to be able to write clearly and concisely. And then they talk about eliminating grammar errors and awkwardness. And they mention very basic grammar errors, a run-on sentence, sentence fragments, and comma splice. Effective paragraphs. There are 4 sections in this: paragraph length, topic sentences, paragraph development, and paragraph coherence. So effective paragraphs, and they write for most types of business messages, short paragraphs are usually best because they promise easier reading and retention. So they go on to say that single sentence paragraphs or 1 or 2 sentences are good at the beginning and the end of business messages, and they're also good at adding emphasis for important facts or ideas. Short paragraphs, 5 to 6 sentences, are standard in most types of business messages. And long paragraphs, up to 8 sentences, you're going to see these in reports as opposed to like business emails, letters, memos, those kinds of things. A topic sentence is just a sentence that is telling you or the reader what the paragraph is about. And it is usually that first sentence of a paragraph. And they indicate documents that feature topic sentences are easy to scan because their most important information is what they're calling front-loaded. So the topic sentence is normally at the beginning of your paragraph. Topic sentences are recommended for paragraphs that define, describe, classify, or illustrate. I would suggest to you that any paragraph you're ever writing, other than if it's thank you for your email from last week, and even that is in itself a topic sentence, they're necessary. So regardless of whether you're defining, describing, classifying, or illustrating. For bad news, they're saying that I think they're almost saying like do away with the topic sentence. I think your topic sentence is still there. It's probably just backloaded. It's in the rear of the paragraph. And then they go on to say in paragraphs of comparative or persuasive purpose, you're going to delay that topic sentence to allow for an opening statement of contrast or agreement. Paragraph development, and these are describe a chronological sequence of events, evaluate causes or relate them to effects, classify the parts of a whole, define terms, compare or contrast one idea with another, analyze a topic or offer a solution to a problem, illustrate an idea or support a claim with examples and data. So that they're basically saying that you want to develop your paragraphs accordingly. You want to group them with meaning and have a topic and write them clearly. Paragraph coherence, create logical coherence by developing a paragraph game plan. They're just asking you to make an outline so that you know what you're going to say in that paragraph. And then they mention carrying coherence through with a topic from sentence to sentence, using pronouns to carry a thought from a previous sentence, use transitional words and phrases to segue from sentence to sentence. So they're just talking about a transition from one idea to the other, maybe between paragraphs or within a paragraph itself. So this concludes chapter 5. I will be putting up a PowerPoint I use to teach with sentence structure as well as paragraph cohesion. So I'll put up those lectures. I'm hoping I can get them to them today. The Myers PowerPoints are taking quite some time to do, as well as they tend to be very long and wordy. And so I do apologize for that. I do think that they're useful. And I imagine in some cases they might be confusing. Please do not be stressed or worried about this. It will come to you in time. You need to trust the process of actually writing. And when you start handing in your assignments and I will, start marking and showing you like, oh, this is a sentence fragment, this is a run-on. And also the upcoming PowerPoint on sentence structure, I think, is much clearer than the Myers textbook is. Not that it isn't clear, but grammar is difficult. So I'm trying to tell you not to be disheartened with the abundance of information in this. All right, and I hope everything is going well with you. I'm sorry that my illness is carrying on. I know I sound terrible, and I will see you shortly. Bye.